My mother-in-law stole the money for my baby's operation. She's young. She'll recover. Then she begged me for help. The soft beeping of hospital monitors had become the soundtrack of my life for the past week. I stared at my 6-month-old daughter Emma, her tiny body dwarfed by the pediatric hospital bed. Her dark curls stuck to her forehead as she slept fitfully, unaware of the storm brewing around her future. "Mrs. Wilson?" Dr. Parker's voice broke through my thoughts. I looked up, instinctively tightening my grip on Emma's little hand. Something in the doctor's expression made my heart plummet before he even spoke. "Can we talk outside?" he asked gently. My husband James, who had been scrolling through his phone by the window, finally looked up. "Is everything okay?" The doctor's face remained professionally neutral, but his eyes held concern. "Just to follow up on some test results." The hallway felt colder than it should have in April. Dr. Parker held Emma's file, his fingers tapping nervously against the manila folder. "The infection has progressed faster than we anticipated," he began, his voice low but clear. "The fluid buildup is putting significant pressure on her auditory nerves." I felt James's hand search for mine. I gripped it, needing something to anchor me. "What does that mean exactly?" James asked, his voice surprisingly steady. Dr. Parker removed his glasses, a gesture that somehow made everything worse. "We need to operate now, or she could lose her hearing permanently. The specialized procedure needs to happen within the next 48 hours. The words hit me like physical blows. My beautiful baby girl. Her future. Her world of sounds. The lullabies I sang to her each night. The wind chimes on our balcony that made her eyes light up. The way she giggled when James made silly noises during her bath time. We'll do it," I said immediately. "Whatever it takes." Dr. Parker nodded, seemingly relieved by our quick decision. "Good. I've scheduled the surgeon for tomorrow morning. Dr. Meyer is one of the best pediatric ENT specialists in the country." "The cost?" James asked, always practical even in crisis. "The finance department will go over everything with you. It's a specialized procedure, so it's not fully covered by your insurance. You'll need to make the deposit by this evening to secure the surgical team." We nodded in unison. "I'll be back to check on Emma before my shift ends," Dr. Parker said, squeezing my shoulder gently before walking away. Back in the room, I held Emma close, breathing in her baby scent mixed with the antiseptic hospital smell. "It'll be okay, Olivia," James whispered, his arm around us both. "We have the money, remember? The account we've been saving in since before she was born." I nodded against his chest. The emergency fund we'd been building for 3 years started when we first decided to try for a baby. We'd been so cautious, so prepared. Every month, a portion of our salaries automatically transferred there, untouched except for true emergencies. This definitely qualified. "I'll call Mom and let her know," James said, already dialing. "She can help us with the paperwork while we stay with Emma." His mother, Patricia, had been staying with us since Emma's birth. She'd insisted on coming to help the new parents, though her help usually came with criticism about everything from how I held my baby to how I organized the kitchen cabinets. An hour later, Patricia swept into the hospital room in her crisp designer outfit, bringing with her the scent of expensive perfume that always gave me a headache. "My poor little princess," she cooed at Emma, completely ignoring me. "Don't worry, your grandmother is here now." She turned to James. "The payment, honey? It needs to be made today, yes?" James nodded. "The joint account. You have access to it for emergencies, remember?" My stomach tightened slightly. Shortly after our wedding, James had insisted his mother have access to our emergency fund, just in case something happens to both of us. I'd reluctantly agreed, never imagining we'd actually need to use it. Of course, of course." Patricia waved dismissively. "I'll handle everything. You two stay with the baby." She left in a flurry of perfume and purpose, already on her phone speaking rapidly to someone. The rest of the day passed in a blur of tests, consultations, and paperwork. Nurses came and went. Emma cried, then slept, then cried again. My body ached from the hospital chair, but I refused to leave her side. At 8:43 p.m., my phone rang. "Mrs. Wilson?" A voice I didn't recognize. This is Rebecca from the hospital billing department. I'm calling about the deposit for tomorrow's procedure. Yes, my mother-in-law was handling that, I said, stepping into the hallway to avoid waking Emma. That's why I'm calling. The payment was declined due to insufficient funds. The corridor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. That's impossible. There should be over $30,000 in that account. I'm sorry, ma'am, but the transaction was rejected by the bank. We can't proceed with scheduling the surgery until the payment clears. My hands trembled as I ended the call. I immediately tried the banking app on my phone, but it kept saying service unavailable. James had gone to get food from the cafeteria. Instead of waiting, I called Patricia directly. She answered on the first ring. Olivia? Is everything okay with Emma? The hospital just called. They said the payment was declined. There was a pause. Too long, too deliberate. Oh. That must be the bank glitch the teller mentioned. Patricia said, her voice light and unconcerned. Don't worry, I'm handling it. These things happen all the time with electronic transfers. Something in her tone made the hair on my arms stand up. I'd grown accustomed to my mother-in-law's little lies over the years, the way she'd forget to pass on phone messages from my parents or misunderstand dinner plans that she didn't approve of. But this was different. This was my daughter's health. Did you transfer the money in person or online? I pressed. Olivia, really? I've taken care of it. The bank assured me everything will be processed by morning. You're stressed and imagining problems where there aren't any. Her dismissive tone struck a nerve. Patricia, this is serious. Emma's surgery. I said I've handled it, she snapped, her facade of sweetness momentarily slipping. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the sharp edge in her voice smoothed out. Now get some rest, dear. You sound exhausted. I'll see you in the morning. She hung up before I could respond. When James returned with sandwiches and coffee, I told him about the call from the hospital. It's probably just a technical issue, he said, echoing his mother's explanation. Mom knows how important this is. She wouldn't let us down. I wanted to believe him, but as night fell and Emma whimpered in her hospital crib, something cold and uneasy settled in my stomach. I'd seen the way Patricia doted on her eldest son Tyler whenever he visited, the way her eyes shone with pride even as she made excuses for his perpetual, temporary financial difficulties. I'd noticed how different her tone was when she spoke about him versus James, who worked tirelessly at his engineering firm, yet somehow never quite measured up to his older brother's imagined potential. I'm going to check the account again, I said, reopening the banking app. This time it loaded, and what I saw made my blood run cold. Our emergency fund, 3 years of careful saving, the money meant for our daughter's critical surgery, had been reduced to a mere $1,500. Not even a tenth of what we needed. The most recent transaction was from yesterday. A transfer out. James, I whispered, my voice barely audible over Emma's soft breathing. The money's gone. Sleep eluded me that night. James had finally fallen into an exhausted slumber in the recliner beside Emma's crib, but my mind raced with calculations and suspicions. By 3 a.m., I knew what I needed to do. I slipped out of the room with James's phone. He always used the same password, Emma's birthday, making it easy to access his banking app, where the full transaction history would be visible. I wasn't snooping, I was surviving. The hospital hallway was dim and quiet as I sank onto a bench, my fingers trembling as I logged in. The transaction glared back at me in stark black text. Transfer to Tyler Wilson, $28,500. Tyler Wilson. Not a hospital. Not a bill collector. My brother-in-law, Patricia's precious firstborn. A memory surfaced from just 2 weeks ago. Tyler had stopped by our apartment unannounced, dressed in designer clothes that probably cost more than my monthly salary. He'd hugged his mother, barely acknowledged James, and completely ignored me as usual. The new startup is going to be huge, he'd boasted over dinner. Just waiting for the next round of funding. Minor cash flow issues until then, you know how it is. All while sporting a new watch that could have paid for Emma's surgery twice over. Patricia had nodded sympathetically. These things happen in business, honey. You're taking such smart risks. The same Patricia who criticized me for buying generic diapers instead of the premium brand, who questioned every dollar I spent on myself, who constantly reminded us to save for Emma's future while simultaneously praising Tyler's entrepreneurial spirit that had yielded nothing but failed ventures for the past decade. I scrolled through the phone, finding text messages between Patricia and Tyler from the previous day. Tyler, need the money today. Landlord threatening eviction. Patricia, I'll handle it. Don't worry. Tyler, thanks, Mom. You're the only one who ever helps me. Patricia, anything for you, my son. My stomach churned with rage. Eviction? The same Tyler who had posted Instagram stories last weekend from a yacht party? Who drove a car worth more than our annual combined income? I kept digging, opening Tyler's Instagram profile. His latest story, posted just hours ago, showed him with a champagne glass, caption reading, "New apartment vibes. #blessed #upgrade." The timestamp was from after the money transfer. I took screenshots of everything. The bank transfer, the text messages, the social media posts, and emailed them to myself before deleting the evidence of my detective work from James's phone. When I returned to the room, James was still asleep, his face troubled even in slumber. Emma stirred slightly, her tiny hand reaching out unconsciously. I took it in mine, feeling her warmth, her pulse, the life that depended on me making the right decisions now. "I won't let you down," I whispered to her. Morning came with no miracle solutions. Dr. Parker visited early, his face grave when I explained the payment situation. "We can't hold the surgical team indefinitely," he said gently. "There are other patients." "Give me until this afternoon," I pleaded. "Please." He nodded reluctantly. "Until 2 p.m. After that, I'll have to reassign the team." James paced the small room, frantically calling colleagues about loans. I watched him, my heart breaking at his desperate efforts and his complete blindness to what had actually happened. "I'm going to call my parents," I announced. His head snapped up. "No, we can handle this ourselves. Our daughter might lose her hearing, James. This isn't the time for pride." "Let me try my mother again first," he insisted. She said she'd figure something out. On cue, Patricia arrived, carrying bags of takeout food and wearing an expression of practiced concern. "Any news from the bank?" James asked immediately. She set down her bags with a heavy sigh. "These things take time, honey. I've filed a complaint about the glitch." I studied her face, the slight avoidance of eye contact, the practiced furrow of her brow. All the signs I'd learned to recognize over years of her small manipulations, now deployed for the biggest betrayal imaginable. "There was no glitch," I said quietly. Both of them turned to me. "What?" James asked. "The money was transferred to Tyler yesterday. On purpose." My voice remained steady despite the rage building inside me. "All of it." Patricia's face flickered between shock and calculation before settling on indignation. "How dare you accuse me of such a thing? I would never." "Tyler Wilson," I continued, looking directly at James. "That's the name on the transfer. Your brother. The same brother who was apparently facing eviction yesterday but is celebrating his new apartment on Instagram today." James's face paled. "Mom, is this true?" Patricia straightened her spine, her momentary discomfort replaced with the regal bearing of a woman who had never been seriously challenged. "You don't understand the pressure he's under. His business associates would abandon him if they knew his financial situation. He needed to maintain appearances. And my daughter needs to maintain her hearing." I snapped, my composure finally breaking. "How could you?" She looked at me with something between pity and contempt. "Business investments sometimes require sacrifices. The surgery can wait a few months. She's just a baby. She'll recover." The room went silent except for Emma's soft breathing, each inhale and exhale a reminder of what was at stake. "She's just a baby. She'll recover." The words hung in the air between us, monstrous and revealing. In that moment, I saw my mother-in-law clearly for perhaps the first time in 5 years of marriage, not as the difficult woman I'd been trying to please, but as someone capable of risking my child's future for her favorite son's comfort. James stood frozen between us, his face a battlefield of emotions. Disbelief, confusion, betrayal. "Mom," he finally whispered, "tell me you didn't do this." Patricia's posture shifted, her chin lifting slightly in that familiar gesture of superiority. "Don't be dramatic, James. Of course I did it. Tyler needed immediate help. Real help, not just talk. He has business associates, a reputation to maintain. And Emma has a life." I cried, my voice cracking. Her hearing, her development, her entire future. "Babies are resilient," Patricia interrupted with a dismissive wave. "The doctors always exaggerate the urgency. I raised 2 boys without running to specialists for every little thing." The casual cruelty of her words made my knees weak. I sank into the chair beside Emma's crib, reaching for my daughter's tiny hand. She stirred in her sleep, her face scrunching momentarily with discomfort. "This isn't every little thing," James said, his voice uncharacteristically firm. "This is our daughter's hearing." Something flickered in Patricia's eyes, not remorse, but annoyance at being questioned. "Your brother was about to lose everything. What kind of mother would I be if I didn't help him? What kind of grandmother are you?" I countered. Her gaze hardened. "One who sees the bigger picture. Tyler is building something important. His success will benefit the whole family, even your daughter." "If she can't hear it," I said bitterly. Patricia turned to James, her expression softening into the one she reserved exclusively for her sons. "Honey, you understand, don't you? Family takes care of family. Tyler will pay it back once his new deal closes." I watched my husband's face, seeing the familiar pull of his mother's manipulation. The same pattern that had played out countless times throughout our marriage, Patricia making unilateral decisions, James hesitating, torn between his wife and the mother who had conditioned him from birth to seek her approval above all else. "When?" I asked, cutting through the tension. "When will Tyler repay it? Today? Tomorrow? Before the 2 p.m. deadline when our daughter loses her surgical slot?" Patricia's expression hardened. "These things take time." "We don't have time," I exploded, startling Emma awake. She began to cry, soft whimpers that broke my heart anew. I gathered her into my arms, rocking her gently. "Now look what you've done," Patricia muttered. Something inside me fractured. "What I've done? I'm not the one who stole from a baby." "It wasn't stealing," she snapped. "That money belongs to the family." "Our family," James finally interjected. "Olivia, Emma, and me. We saved that money for emergencies." "And your brother had an emergency," Patricia insisted. "A new apartment and champagne isn't an emergency," I said, pulling out my phone to show them the screenshots I'd taken. "This is from Tyler's Instagram, posted last night, after the transfer." James took the phone, his face growing pale as he scrolled through the images. "He's celebrating?" "While our daughter might lose her hearing," I confirmed, my voice breaking. The room fell silent except for Emma's quieting sniffles. I could see James struggling, his lifetime of conditioning battling against the evidence before his eyes and the needs of his daughter. "We need to call Tyler," he finally said. "He needs to return the money immediately." Patricia's expression darkened. "Don't you dare bother your brother with this. He's under tremendous pressure." "Our daughter needs surgery," James's voice rose, startling all of us. He never raised his voice, especially not to his mother. "I already told you."
"No, Mom."
"This time you don't get to tell me anything." James's hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. "You took our money without permission. You put Tyler's wants above Emma's needs. This isn't a family decision. It's theft." The word hung between them. Theft. The unvarnished truth that stripped away decades of manipulation and excuses. Patricia's face contorted, her carefully maintained facade crumbling. "How dare you speak to me this way? After everything I've sacrificed for you? I raised you, fed you, educated you, and now you've betrayed me," James finished quietly. "You've betrayed my daughter." She turned to me, eyes flashing. "This is your doing. You've poisoned my son against me." "You did that yourself," I replied, suddenly calm in the face of her fury. The truth had a clarifying effect. James moved to stand beside me and Emma, physically positioning himself with us rather than between us and his mother. It was a small gesture, but in the context of our family dynamics, it was seismic. "I want you to leave, Mom," he said quietly. "What?" "Leave the hospital. Now. I'll deal with this." For once, Patricia seemed genuinely shocked. "You're choosing them over your own mother? Over your brother?" James looked down at Emma, who had settled against my chest, her tiny fist clutching my shirt. "Yes," he said simply. "I am." Patricia gathered her purse with trembling hands, her movements stiff with injured dignity. At the door, she paused. "You'll regret this. When you realize what you've done to this family." "You did this," James interrupted. "Not me. Not Olivia. You." After she left, the room felt lighter somehow, despite the crisis that still loomed. James sat heavily on the edge of the bed, his shoulders slumped with the weight of what had just happened. "I'm sorry," he whispered, reaching for my hand. "I should have seen it. I should have protected you both." I squeezed his fingers, feeling a strange mixture of grief and relief. "What do we do now?" "We still need the money by 2 p.m. He straightened, resolve replacing doubt. "We'll find it. Somehow." For the first time in hours, I felt a flicker of hope. The next few hours passed in a blur of desperate phone calls. James contacted colleagues, friends, even his boss, scraping together what he could. I swallowed my pride and called my parents in Oregon, explaining the situation in hushed tones while James paced the corridor outside. By noon, we had secured enough for the deposit. My parents had emptied their savings, James's boss had advanced his quarterly bonus, and 3 of his colleagues had pitched in with emergency loans. The relief was immense but temporary, shadowed by the knowledge that this crisis had been entirely preventable. "I've scheduled a transfer with Tyler," James said, returning to the room with coffee. His voice was flat, drained of its usual warmth. "He agreed to return the money?" I asked, surprised. "Not exactly." James's jaw tightened. He claimed he'd already invested most of it in his new business venture. Offered to pay us back, with interest, in 6 months. The casual audacity was breathtaking. So, what changed his mind? I told him if the money wasn't back in our account by the end of the week, I'd file a police report for theft. James's voice was quiet but firm, and that I'd name both him and Mom as accomplices. I stare at my husband, seeing a new version of him emerging from the crisis, someone capable of standing up to the family that had controlled him for so long. "He called me ungrateful," James continued. "Said I was betraying the family for..." He hesitated, glancing at me. "For what?" "For that woman and her child," he said, not meeting my eyes. The word stung, but I wasn't surprised. I'd always known how Tyler and Patricia viewed me, as an outsider who had somehow stolen James from them rather than a wife who loved him. "What did you say?" I asked. A hint of a smile touched James's lips. "I told him that that woman is my wife, and her child is his niece, and that they are my family now." I reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. For 5 years, I'd watched James struggle under the weight of his mother's expectations and his brother's demands. To see him finally breaking free was both painful and beautiful. With the immediate financial crisis temporarily resolved, I turned my attention to what would come next. Because this wasn't over, not by a long shot. "I need your laptop," I told James that evening after Emma's surgery had been successfully completed. She was sleeping peacefully, the surgeon's cautiously optimistic prognosis ringing in our ears. "What for?" he asked, passing me his computer. "Documentation," I replied. I didn't scream. I documented. Over the next hours, while James dozed in the chair beside Emma's bed, I worked. Screenshot by screenshot, message by message, I built my case. I started a spreadsheet tracking every financial irregularity I could remember from the past 5 years, the times when money had mysteriously disappeared from our accounts, always with a plausible explanation from Patricia. The loans to Tyler that were never repaid. The expensive gifts purchased in our names for family members to make Patricia look generous. I had always noticed these things but had dismissed them as the cost of keeping peace in the family. Now I saw them for what they were, a pattern of financial abuse disguised as family obligation. From my phone, I downloaded all the screenshots I'd taken of Tyler's social media. His new apartment celebration. The designer watch he'd been flaunting the same week he'd supposedly needed money to avoid eviction. The vacation photos posted weeks after he'd borrowed money for urgent medical bills. I compiled everything in a folder labeled simply evidence. Not for a court of law, though that remained an option, but for the court of family opinion. Because I knew Patricia's greatest currency, her reputation. The woman who presented herself as the selfless matriarch, the devoted grandmother, the wise elder dispensing advice and guidance to all who would listen. The facade she'd crafted over decades, built on manipulated truths and selective storytelling. A facade that would shatter when confronted with documented reality. I opened my email and composed a message to James's cousin Katie, the family member I'd always felt most comfortable with. The one who had occasionally raised an eyebrow at Patricia's more outrageous claims, but had never directly challenged her. Katie, I need to share something difficult with you. It's about Emma's surgery and some disturbing family matters. I attached select pieces of evidence, enough to paint the picture, but not so much as to overwhelm. Katie was well connected within the extended family, respected in a way I could never be as the outsider daughter-in-law. I didn't ask her to take sides. I simply presented the facts and asked her to keep the information confidential, for now. The seed planted, I closed the laptop. A text notification lit up my phone. Tyler had posted another Instagram story. With cold detachment, I opened it. There he was at some rooftop bar, smiling widely with the caption, "Investing in the future. Dreams require sacrifice." The unintentional irony might have made me laugh if it hadn't been my daughter's future he was so casually dismissing. I saved the image, adding it to my growing collection. Patricia had underestimated me from the beginning, dismissing me as the quiet, accommodating daughter-in-law who would cry and move on. She thought I would make a scene, scream and rage, and then be labeled the hysterical outsider trying to drive a wedge between a mother and son. Instead, I was building my case methodically, gathering proof that even her most devoted supporters wouldn't be able to dismiss. Beside me, Emma stirred in her sleep, her small body fighting to heal. I stroked her cheek gently, my resolve hardening. "She thinks it's over," I whispered to my daughter. But I'm just getting started. 2 weeks after Emma's surgery, we received an invitation that made James's face cloud over. "Mom wants us at the family gathering next Saturday," he said, holding his phone as if it might bite him. Uncle Richard's 60th birthday. I looked up from where I was gently placing small earphones on Emma, part of the audio therapy the specialist had recommended. "Are you ready for that?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Does it matter? If we don't go, everyone will talk. If we go, they'll talk anyway." I finished for him. The silence between us held the weight of our decision. Patricia had been suspiciously quiet since the hospital confrontation. No calls to check on Emma's recovery. No texts asking when she could see her granddaughter. Just silence. And now this group invitation to a family event where her position as respected matriarch would be secure. "We should go," I said finally. James looked surprised. "You want to see her?" I carefully removed the earphones from Emma's tiny ears. "No. But I want everyone else to see her. The real her." Understanding dawned on his face. The evidence. I nodded. It's time. Saturday arrived with the sticky heat of early summer. I dressed Emma in her brightest outfit, a yellow sundress that made her look like the ray of sunshine she was in our lives. The surgical scars behind her ears were still visible, a reminder of what we'd almost lost. James drove in tense silence, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "Are you sure about this?" he asked as we pulled up to his uncle's sprawling house. "Not entirely," I admitted. "But sometimes the truth needs witnesses." The house buzzed with familiar chaos, aunts clustering in the kitchen, uncles debating in the living room, cousins catching up over drinks. Patricia held court near the birthday cake, resplendent in an expensive outfit I recognized as a recent purchase. Beside her stood Tyler, designer sunglasses perched on his head even indoors, laughing loudly at something one of the older uncles had said. When she spotted us, her smile faltered momentarily before brightening with artificial warmth.
James.
You came. She moved toward us, arms outstretched for Emma. And how is my little princess? I tightened my hold on my daughter, stepping slightly back. She's recovering. The doctors say we caught the infection just in time to save her hearing. Something flashed across Patricia's face. Irritation, perhaps, that I had referenced the surgery in public, but her smile remained fixed. Of course she is. Our family has strong genes. Tyler approached, clapping James on the shoulder with casual presumption. Brother,
Good to see you.
he nodded at me with minimal acknowledgement. The baby looks well. Her name is Emma, I said calmly. And yes, she's doing better now that she's had her operation. An awkward silence fell. Tyler's eyes darted to his mother, who quickly spoke up. Let's not bore everyone with medical talk. Come, the food is ready. The gathering proceeded with superficial pleasantries. I watched Patricia work the room, accepting compliments on her outfit, her cooking contributions, her beautiful family. Occasionally, she would glance our way, her expression calculating. After the meal, when the family had gathered in the living room for Uncle Richard's cake cutting, I excused myself briefly. I returned with my large tote bag and waited for the perfect moment. It came sooner than expected. Such a blessing to have the whole family together. Uncle Richard said, beaming at his assembled relatives. Especially the little ones. He nodded toward Emma in James's arms. Yes, agreed his wife. Family is everything. Supporting each other through thick and thin. Patricia nodded sagely. That's what I've always taught my sons. Family comes first. I felt something click into place, a certainty that had been building for weeks. I couldn't agree more, I said, my voice carrying across the room. Every head turned toward me, surprise evident on most faces. I rarely spoke up at family gatherings. I reached into my bag and pulled out the stack of papers I'd prepared. That's why I wanted to share something important with all of you. Patricia's eyes narrowed. Olivia, this is hardly the time for. It's exactly the time, I interrupted, my voice steady. Uncle Richard just said it. Family supports each other through thick and thin. I began distributing the printed papers, bank statements, screenshots, text messages. Each document carefully annotated with dates and explanations. What is this? James's aunt asked, peering at the papers. The truth, I replied simply, about what family really means to some people. I didn't need to explain further. The evidence spoke for itself. The transfer of Emma's surgery money to Tyler, his celebratory posts hours later, the text messages revealing the deliberate deception. The room fell silent as people read, passed papers to each other, murmured in shock. I didn't say a word. I didn't scream. I didn't accuse. I just passed the printed statements around like napkins at a dinner party. Patricia's face drained of color. Her proud smile died as the whispers grew louder. Is this true? Uncle Richard asked, looking directly at Patricia. You took money meant for the baby's surgery? It wasn't like that. Patricia stammered, her composure cracking. Tyler needed a new apartment, apparently. One of the cousins interrupted, holding up the printout of Tyler's Instagram post. While your granddaughter almost lost her hearing. Tyler stepped forward, his charm offensive ready. This is being blown out of proportion. There was a temporary financial. There's a pattern, Katie spoke up suddenly. She had been quiet until now, but her voice carried authority. It's all there in black and white. Years of taking from one son to give to another. James finally looked at his mother, not with love, but with disbelief that had hardened into certainty. Why, Mom? She's your granddaughter. Patricia's face contorted, her careful facade completely collapsed. You don't understand what it's like. Tyler has such potential. He just needs support until... Until when? James's uncle challenged. He's 42 years old, Patricia. I gathered Emma from James's arms, kissing her soft cheek. Without another word, I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, I heard the eruption of voices, accusations, defenses. I stepped out into the evening air, breathing deeply for what felt like the first time in years. We settled into our new life with a sense of hard-won peace. The shadow of betrayal gradually receded, replaced by the simple joys of watching our daughter grow and thrive. I found part-time work teaching at a local school. James's commute was longer, but he seemed lighter, freed from the constant weight of his mother's expectations. Then, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon in July, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Emma was napping, and James wouldn't be home for hours. Wiping my hands on a kitchen towel, I peered through the peephole. Patricia stood on our doorstep, her usual designer outfit replaced by a simple cotton dress. Her hair, normally perfectly styled, looked flat and unkempt. She clutched her purse with white-knuckled hands, her eyes darting nervously along the corridor. For a moment, I considered not answering. Then, with a deep breath, I opened the door. "Olivia," she said, her voice uncharacteristically subdued. "May I come in?" I hesitated, then stood aside without a word. She entered cautiously, her eyes taking in our modest new home with an expression I couldn't quite read. "James isn't here," I said, remaining standing. I didn't offer her a seat. "I know. I came to see you, actually." That was unexpected. In 5 years of marriage, Patricia had never once sought me out specifically. I waited, arms crossed, as she gathered her thoughts. "You have a lovely home," she offered weakly. "What do you want, Patricia?" Her carefully maintained composure cracked. "It's Tyler. He's gone. To San Francisco." "We know." She shook her head. "No, he's really gone. Disappeared. The last I heard from him was 2 weeks ago when She swallowed hard. "When he asked for more money. Despite everything, I felt a flicker of pity. And you gave it to him." "Everything I had," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "My savings, my retirement fund." He said it was for an investment opportunity, something big in tech startups. But now his phone is disconnected, and the California address he gave me doesn't exist. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt hollow. "I'm sorry that happened to you, but I don't understand why you're telling me this." Her eyes, when they met mine, held desperation. "I have nowhere else to go. The family, after what happened at the party, they don't." She trailed off, then straightened her spine with visible effort. "I need help, Olivia. Just temporarily. Alone until I can sell some jewelry. I can't pay my rent this month." The irony was almost too perfect. The woman who had stolen our savings for her golden son, now asking for financial help because that same son had drained her dry and disappeared. "What about your investment accounts? Your properties?" I asked. "All gone," she said, her voice trembling. "Tyler said he would triple it within 6 months." I thought of all the times she'd criticized my financial decisions, called me wasteful for buying Emma educational toys, lectured me on the importance of family support, all while systematically enabling her son's exploitation. "And now you've come to me," I said quietly. "The daughter-in-law you never wanted. The mother whose child you were willing to sacrifice." "I've made mistakes," she acknowledged, the admission clearly painful for her. "But we're still family."
Family.
The word she'd wielded like a weapon for years. I studied her face. Older now, marked by the consequences of her choices. Her voice trembled. Tyler had drained her savings and disappeared. She needed help. My help. "Please, Olivia," she whispered, her pride finally shattered. "I have nowhere else to turn." A few months ago, I might have felt rage. Now I only felt a strange, calm clarity. I walked to the kitchen and returned with a glass of water, which I handed to her silently. She accepted it with shaking hands. I waited until she had taken a sip before speaking. "Do you remember what you said? When I confronted you about taking Emma's surgery money?" My voice was gentle, almost kind. "You said, 'She's just a baby. She'll recover.'" Patricia's eyes widened slightly, recognition, and fear flickering across her face. I smiled politely. "You're still relatively young, Patricia. I'm sure you'll recover." Her face crumpled, the last vestiges of her dignity collapsing. "Olivia, please."
No.
The word was simple, final. No more manipulation. No more guilt. No more chances. I moved to the door and opened it, my resolution unwavering. "Goodbye, Patricia." For a moment she stood frozen, perhaps waiting for me to relent. When I didn't, she gathered her purse and moved slowly to the door. On the threshold, she turned back. "What will you tell James?" "The truth," I replied. "Always the truth." After she left, I closed the door quietly and leaned against it, exhaling slowly. From down the hall came the soft sounds of Emma waking from her nap, her gentle coos calling me back to what truly mattered. As I walked toward my daughter's room, I felt the last chains of Patricia's influence fall away. We were free now, all of us. Even her, though she couldn't see it yet. Emma reached for me as I entered, her smile bright and trusting. I lifted her into my arms, breathing in her sweet baby scent. "It's just us now," I whispered against her hair. "The family we chose."